Good evening, everyone. I would like to officially call this Manvel City Council meeting to order for our workshop here at 5:01 p.m., where we have 6 of 7 members present. We have a few items listed here on the workshop, so we'll get to the first one, which is a presentation, and then we have a few executive sessions, which we will call those out when we go to step into executive session. And so, Dan, we'll turn this first item over here to you for the presentation. I believe we have allotted 30 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll step into executive session. So we have presentation on Riverway Creek development.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight we do have a presentation from Brian and his team at Riverway Creek. So they're looking at a kind of a neat development potential, basically estate-sized lots, and what they're talking about is half-acre lots, open ditch subdivision, similar to a lot of old parts of Manvel. So they'll talk a little bit about the concept that they've got, probably allowing sanitary sewer systems and then a public water system. But they want to spend some time talking about that, but then also some different funding mechanisms that they'd like to visit with council. So we've had, I guess, just one actual face-to-face meeting with them, and once we heard what they were thinking about doing, we thought it'd be a good idea to have an audience with council, because there are some things, as you'll see whenever if you want to kind of make your way on up, as you'll see some things that we have experience with in the city with TERS, and then PIDs we've heard about recently, but we don't have any current PIDs in the city right now. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Foley with Riverway. This is Brian Gerard. We're excited to be here tonight and hopefully partner with the city on a project we've wanted to do for a long time, which is more of an estate style deal, like a sense of arrival, rural community type subdivision. We have over 30 years of development history here in the greater Houston area. We've done projects from Pearland to Sealy to Brookshire, Angleton, and Crosby. And we bought this land in Manvel a couple years ago. Love the property. Gotten some good feedback from initial discussions with builders on our concept. I know it's not what you've been hearing lately. Everyone's going a little higher density, so we thought this might distinguish itself a little bit. I think it's a good fit for the Manvel city. So there are some problems with it financially when you go with these bigger lot deals. They're kind of hard to get the lot price to a reasonable situation unless there's some participation with the city. Tonight, Brian's going to go into depth about how we can partner with the city to deliver this type of product through a PID and a TERS. We've done this same concept on one of our most recent subdivisions down in Angleton, Texas. So worked out really well for us there. And yeah, we're really excited to share this concept. So Brian, do you want to go a little bit more into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I may be having technical difficulties with the clicker here. Oh, wait. You want to just flip through it for me? Do you have a copy of this? Let me make sure you have one. Got a couple extras. And the packet's pretty thick, and so especially since we only have about 30 minutes, we'll breeze through a lot of in the body parts of this, but there's a lot of detailed information about particularly about PIDs and TERS and our project specifics that feel free to take home and read at your leisure. And this first slide you see is an outline of the roughly 160-acre tract that Riverway owns, and located in between Oilfield and Belcher Road within the city of Manvel. And the following slide is an overall concept for our development. As Mr. Johnson mentioned, we're proposing minimum half-acre lots, open ditch, rural feel, room for large garages, swing-in garages, the wide floor plans, large single-family homes, or large single-story homes if desired, shops, things like that, type of thing that we're getting the market is really yearning for, and we'd like to be able to provide something like that. And along with this, generous open space park areas, particularly along Sugar Creek and Belcher Road, as well as just generally kind of having an open feel to the subdivision itself. Half-acre lots are the minimum TCQ size for septic systems, and so we would go into quite a bit of detail on each individual lot for septic systems, whether it be drain systems, aerobic, what have you, but just generally kind of wanted to get these concepts in front of the city here and discuss how we might be able to bring this to fruition. These are the type products that we mentioned. They're doing these on other similar type lot sizes where the more wider home sites, they have a nice street scene and feel to them. So just kind of give you an idea of what some of these products might look like. And how can we accomplish this? There's probably 30 slides in here about PIDs and TERS, and like I say, I borrowed these from one of our TERS consultants that is working for us on another project, and so I don't claim to be an expert, but we have done these a few times. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I'm able to. But generally, we'll go through what they are, and I know a lot of you are probably familiar with these concepts already. But if you're not, this is a pretty good kind of outline about how that whole process works and how it can be implemented. And we're seeing it quite often in a lot of these municipalities that we're working in, particularly in cities, because these PIDs and TERS are managed by the cities as opposed to MUDs, which are a separate entity. So that's kind of one thing that's a little bit different from what you guys have seen a lot of times. So public-private partnerships. And so basically, again, we look at these as a partnership with the city. It has to work for everybody. And these are ways for the city to further its economic development goals and its housing goals and just generally provide the type of development that it wants to occur in its city. A few more bullet points on here. Typically, these are, and in this case especially, it creates a but-for partnership. So, and what I mean by that is, but for a public financing mechanism, some of these projects would not be feasible. And so that's how we're able to pull these together. The good news is it does not put any burden on any of the other parts of the city or the city itself. This is strictly what we're proposing only on the land that we own and the future homeowners that would be in there. And so essentials of a public-private partnership are the political leadership, public sector involvement, a well-thought-out plan, dedicated income stream, which comes from the PID and the TERS, communications with stakeholders, and selecting the right partner. You know, and I'm going to probably just run through some of this so we can talk a little bit more specifically about our project. So we obviously understand the growth that and the economic activity, the benefits that are created from future building and the increased tax value and more residents and sales tax and all that good stuff. So on this last paragraph, it says infrastructure improvements. That's what that's how we've been utilizing it in a lot of our subdivision projects. It's a use of economic development tools in conjunction with planning to foster development, typically focusing on infrastructure needs. So the next slide talks about the chicken or the egg dilemma, and we talk about different financing mechanisms. There's a lot of different ways to approach these. Sometimes they're infrastructure funding and bonds that get upfront for the financing of the development. In some cases, they're reimbursement to the developer, which is how we've utilized them typically. And what the PIDs and the TERS do is create a monetized revenue stream that bondholders can rely upon. And so they have the authority and the weight and the teeth for the bondholders to be assured that they will be paid in full per the terms of the agreements. So next slide, tax increment reinvestment zones, or TERS, you guys may be familiar with. Essentially, it is an increment. So since the property in this case is agricultural land, unimproved land, it has very little taxable value. However, in its developed state, that value is much higher. And so the way a TERS can capture and it can reinvest the increment within the zones, within the boundaries of that zone. And there are opportunities to expand TERSs should the city desire, whether it be to contiguous properties or other parts of the city as well. We do a lot of times overlapping public improvement districts, or PIDs, that work in conjunction with the TERS, where that TERS increment will help offset that PID assessment. And again, PIDs are a public improvement district that is solely on the petitioners, in our case, our land, that would be paying that additional assessment. Going on to the next slide, the TIF, the tax increment financing, that is a term within the TERS. There's some information about the tax codes and the laws, and I won't bore you with all that stuff. Same with the next slide, shows some things of what TERSs can pay for, and there's a number of things that the cities can use to its benefit. This is a graph kind of depicting how we talked about. You have the base value, which is the gray, and then you have the TERS. And so in some cities, they will do 100% TERS, where 100% of that value increment and additional tax that's created goes to stay within that TERS. In some cases, it's less than that. And so at the end of the TERS period, that increment funding for the TERS goes away, and the city is then, it gets the full increment into its general taxing fund as it would any other city property taxes. Two ways to create new tax increment. New construction is where you see, and where I'm sure the city of Manvel has seen a large amount of increased values. The other is organic growth, such as annual property appreciation, which has also been significant with the increase in prices as well. This is a circle chart showing, how that works. You get development, increased property values, the tax increment, and the TERS improvements. Going on, why create a TERS? Again, we talked about it. You're trying to spur economic development, and we're trying to make a project occur that might not otherwise occur. Next one talks about a PID and what they can provide financing for. Typically, what we see is generally what we call any sort of public improvement: streets, drainage, parks, landscaping, all those types of things are eligible for PID financing. The PID creation process is a series of meetings and ordinances that are adopted by the city and the landowner, where a petition is created and a public hearing is held, and all the statutory items are carried throughout the process. A lot of notes here that I'm not going to worry about reading all of them. Then this slide shows how can a PID be created? In our case, we own 100% of the land, so in some cases there could be you would need a majority of the property owners to petition for that process. Frequently asked questions are on here. Probably the biggest one we get is, is the PID a property tax? It's not technically a property tax, but in all in all senses, it acts like a property tax, except that it's usually the first year is set based on a value, and then what that tax rate equivalent is. The interesting thing about PID assessments is that they do not go up. They stay the same. So if somebody's property value doubles, effectively their tax rate would go in half because the assessment would stay the same. But it is similar to a property tax, and all these are disclosed ahead of any discussions and things like that with future homeowners. In fact, the new Texas Real Estate Commission forms have a box now for PIDs, just like they've had for MUDs for many years. So they're becoming much more common. Another question asked, how are the costs for improvements assessed? Generally, you want to have some logic in how you're assessing the property. If one lot size, for instance, is larger than another, you might take the square footage or the front footage, and generally spreading that equally as appropriate to those future homeowners. How are PID assessments paid? They are an item that's listed on property tax bill, and just like if the county tax assessor was collecting for a MUD, it would be a line item there. So you'd have the city tax, and then you have the let's call it Riverway Creek Public Improvement District, and so all those are collected. They're kept in a separate account. Mortgage companies will usually escrow that if they're escrowing for the other items too. Next slide is there was some information about the lifespan, which we can discuss. PID financing. We talked a little bit about this. There's a little bit more information about how those are how those can be funded, whether that's upfront or reimbursement to the developer. This goes on to talk about some of the costs, and generally what I could say about that is usually with the city, once we have, let's call it a development agreement term sheet, we would begin the process in earnest, and the developer would put up a deposit with the city in order to pay the appropriate consultants for legal and consulting expenses to get these items created, hearings held, things like that. So it's not a burden on the city. Talk a little bit about the process, which we've kind of mentioned. Do the PID, petition, there's some hearings in various meetings and more hearings, and then ultimately the levy is adopted, and finally the bonds are issued for the PID assessments. Now the next slide talks about the PID TERS and how those come together. The PID is the monetization and the annuity structure, let's call it, for these future payments, and the TERS helps to reduce that amount, and that's where that city participation. Again, this is not coming from any monies the city is collecting or would otherwise be capturing elsewhere. This would only be within the PID and the TERS. The next slide goes on to talk a little bit more, you can have the TERS fund the entire PID assessment, and you can have a TERS fund a portion of that PID assessment. And so ultimately, it kind of comes down to what is a marketable tax rate and who's providing what, things like that. A little more information. The PID and the TERS are formed over the entire project. The bonds are issued for the public infrastructure. And generally, we have a coterminous TERS with the PID. So usually it's worded as such that when the PID obligations are retired, let's say it's a 30-year PID, once those PID bonds are paid, then that TERS will go away as well. And so then the city will be able to capture 100% of that revenue stream. We have an example scenario. Actually, I'm going to skip this one. We can talk a little bit more about ours. But it does give you a way of looking at how that could be calculated and things like that. And so a little bit more about Riverway Creek. Again, this is the slide we showed a little earlier. The next one is the existing major thoroughfare plan, which we believe may need some adjustments. Those are some discussions we've briefly had with staff and want to look into a little more closely about how we can further the goals of the city to provide a connectivity that makes sense and works with this project. And so there's Markham, which currently runs right through the property, but there's an existing right-of-way on the north side, as well as existing right-of-way for Belcher and oil fields. So we can get a little more into detail on that when you're ready. We have a conceptual lotting study. I will be the first to recognize that there's some tweaks that need to be made, things like block length and things like that. But this was just to give us a general idea of what kind of density and detention acreage we might need to work with the confines of what we have, and we've identified some park areas and things like that. Let's talk about the impact. So our projected land use has roughly 152 single-family lots. That's what we base some of this math on. Approximately 40 acres of parks, detention, and open space, which is quite a bit. Almost, it's a good chunk of this property. 11 acres of roadway dedication based on the land use plan that we have, and additional assessed value creation would be over $80 million. So quite a bit of potential value growth here in the city. At the current tax rate, that indicates at a 56-cent tax rate, approximately $468,000 of additional city tax revenue that could be generated and utilized towards the TERS. It also lists the other taxing entities, of which, of course, the school district would be the largest beneficiary. Next, we talk about some more of the impacts. With 150 single-family houses, we're looking at probably 600 new residents with the kids. Could be half of those new students in the schools. Of course, added local business support and increased sales tax for all the city businesses. New city water supply in an area that doesn't currently have any. A new park along Sugar Creek, and this rural feel of home sites that like we discussed earlier, we feel would be just a great addition to the city. We talk about a few kind of high-level items. During this process, we'll want to discuss a development agreement so that the city knows what we're going to build and we know what we're going to build. Talking about the PID and the TERS, variances or a PUD that would be appropriate. with the zoning and things that would allow us to create this project, including the half-acre size, the open ditches, and the major thoroughfare plan and phasing of roadway improvements. Also, we would commit to building the water plant. And since these would be public facilities, and based on our understanding, it would be beneficial for the city to have some water down there that could be expanded or utilized elsewhere should it desire. All lots will be served by private septic systems, and since we're providing our own water and sewer, we won't be impacting any of the city facilities, and thus we would request waiver of the impact fees. So that I know I ran through a lot really fast, and but like I say, feel free to look in your time. But I thought maybe we could take a couple minutes for questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brian, for covering that ground very quickly. There were a lot of slides, and you moved through them in an expedited manner. As staff, is there anything that you guys would like to add, any color or flavor to that before we open it up to council?
Just real quickly, so if you're wondering, so we talked about this. We are a zoned community, as we all know, and so there is not a zone that actually captures a half-acre lot. It's kind of a neat niche, I guess. So we have this single-family residential, which is a 63,000 square foot or 6,300 square foot, or we have a 1 acre lot. So we don't have a zone in between the two. So that's where he mentioned a PUD. So that's probably what we would be looking at here, a PUD zoning, which is completely appropriate. But so it's not uncommon, just like Valencia and Meridiana. We work a lot of the site-specific things into that zoning, if you will.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Well, council, any comments or questions? Councilman Lands?
The location you have down in Angleton, what are the lot sizes down there?
That was a higher density deal. We went all the way from 45s to 60-foot lots.
What's are they half acre? Are they larger than half acre?
No, sir, like the front length of the lot was 45.
The square footage of the lots.
Oh, total would be like 5,000 to 6,500 square feet on those.
Okay, so these are half acre lots.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it's going to be an aerobic system in every lot.
We would do a septic design. Some lots will inherently be larger than others. Some people may want a pool, some won't. It'll ultimately be determined by the septic design engineer and how much available green space there is. It would either be aerobic or drip systems, I'm sure.
Okay, because that kind of, that's interesting to me, is the half acre lots with aerobic systems in every one of them. That'd be, doesn't seem big enough for aerobic, but that's why I was asking what the size was in Angleton.
Well, Angleton was public water and sewer for that deal.
Okay, all right.
I can tell you that there's a number of projects in other counties that they're building on half-acre lots, as that is the TCEQ minimum. And so I've seen designs that have enough drain field for the aerobic system. Where it gets tricky is when folks want to cover more of their lot with improvements, in which case they can do drains, drip systems within flower beds and things like that that really get the size down. But without a pool and a large shop in the backyard, an aerobic system should be sized correctly for the house. Now, if it's a big 10,000 square foot house, that would be different. You may need a bigger lot.
So, and the homes, are y'all going to be the builders, or y'all going to sell the lots?
Undecided right now. We do build homes. Typically, though, we develop the lots and sell them. But right now, we're just trying to make sure the project has legs. Until we get a little further along and know our costs, we can't really start.
Understood. Because these are some pretty good sized homes you have here in this picture.
Yep.
Page 4. And those aren't half acre lots. Those are larger lots there in those photographs, right?
Actually, those homes fit on half-acre lots. They need about 100-foot width, and so 100 by 200 will fit those floor plans with a 10-foot setback on each side. So they are in some cases, we can get a little wider in order to do the swing ends and things like that,
Okay.
but generally, that product you see should more or less fit on the lot size.
Well, if this does proceed, I would say that the lot study y'all have, I think there definitely would end up being more than one entrance for those number of homes.
Sure.
That's one thing that I kind of look for on subdivision developments is entrance and access, especially for emergency services. So I think that would need to be looked at some point if we move
Sure.
on. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we will certainly address that with our land planning.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Opliger?
So, a couple questions. So the oil field or Belcher, I know Belcher's a dirt road, getting there. The oil field is partly paved, coming from 99, I think, dirt coming from Masters. How do you plan to address that?
Well, I think that's something we need to work through with the city. Right now, Belcher doesn't connect. There's right-of-way, but there's no roadway past that air park there. And so the good news is with some of this funding mechanism, we could allocate those dollars towards some public improvements. So my understanding is that ultimately Belcher would be a parkway facility. So we would be working together with the city to try to make that happen.
And then inside the subdivision, the roads would be concrete or asphalt?
Most likely concrete. There's no longer to us a significant cost savings between the asphalt and the concrete. So generally, probably concrete.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments, questions? Councilman Perry?
Just that I'm understanding correctly based upon your presentation, for this project to go forward, you definitely need the public-private partnership, either the PID or the TERS.
Yes, sir, both in conjunction. The PID and the TERS mechanism would allow this project to move forward, but the roads are of consequence too, because there's a major thoroughfare going through the middle of the property, and the cost burden on us would kill the project. That's another discussion that we're going to need to have.
Okay, thank you.
So just to echo what Councilman Lance was saying, looking at your site plan, there need to be a second entrance. I see in one of the site plans it comes off from the west side, but then in the actual lot layout, it doesn't look like it's called out there, so you guys would want to make sure to address that. For TERS, you need it to be TERS, capital projects that are reimbursable from a TERS. Do you have an outline of what those projects would be and the associated cost yet?
We've done some very preliminary cost estimates. We don't have full engineers' cost estimates yet. However, we can provide a general budget of what those estimated reimbursable amounts could be. And certainly the reimbursements are always less than the actual cost, but we'd be happy to provide more detail about, what we'd be looking for.
Yeah, because I think that's because when your example gave $5 million, so I thought that's all that you guys were looking for, but it seems like it's going to be above and beyond what that $5 million is, correct? That was just used as just an example?
Yes, I think, so again, there's the two components. You've got the TERS and you've got the PID. So the PID, we just have to look at the estimated value at the time that home sells, and we want it to be competitive with other projects in the areas which have MUDs, and so typically those carry a tax rate that's, let's call it $1. And so we'd want to have an assessment that's in line with that so that it's marketable, and then we can look at how that generates the assessment and what type of reimbursement would be available based on that.
Okay. Because I think for me, I'm going to want to see what some of those number breakouts are going to be. That's going to drive a lot of it. One of the things that you didn't mention is with the PID, that because it's an assessment, the city takes on the liability. It's basically like an HOA fee. And so if people refuse to pay, there's not where the county goes out and collects it for us. People can refuse to pay their PID. The benefit of it is once you've paid off your assessment, you no longer have to pay it off like a mud tax. But with the mud tax, forming a mud, there's also additional legal parameters around a mud. And it's also not where the city takes on the liability. It's the mud entity itself that takes on the liability. So that gives me a little concern going with a PID compared to a mud. But understanding what some of those financial breakouts would be and understanding the cost differential and what potential liability and risk the city has to assume. So that way we know what we would have to take on if we went that route, I think is going to be key to helping us make a decision moving forward. So if you guys are able to work on that and continue the conversations with staff, but I know there's some because we have not done a PID before, there's been some good stories out there with PIDs. There's been some horror stories out there with PIDs. I think there's a lot of caution with this. And so we'd want to work with you guys to get a full grasp and to continue this conversation.
Excellent. We welcome that.
Any other comments or questions from council?
And that's in the city limits?
Yes, sir. In
Really?
it's in the outer bands of it there.
I thought the airport kind of cut the,
We're right at the edge. We're at the end.
right at the edge?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how y'all reached out that far, but y'all grabbed it.
Well, the other thing I want you guys to consider is that if we were, not saying we are, but if we were to go the TERS route, there would need to be a cost of service per residential lot that would be involved with that. Because when we give the TERS, we're giving away our increment, but yet there's still a cost of service that we're going to have to provide if Chief gets called out there, or Captain Day gets called out there, or Public Works has to call out there to fix a crack or a leaking fire hydrant or something that's above and beyond what we've seen with other agreements that we've firmed up with other developers. That piece is taken into consideration.
Absolutely.
Okay. Staff, Dan, anything else from you guys?
I guess they're going to ask, what is the next step, right? And so is there a general consensus? That's a stretch, but for this product, I guess, because this is something new. I mean, I don't hear anything, no, we don't want this necessarily. Is it probably more the financing itself? That's kind of the cause for pause? Why this and why not a mud? I know a couple of y'all have reached out and asked Rosie and I specifically about, what does this do to our bonding capacity? And it directly impacts it, quite frankly. So, from the financing standpoint, that's scary, right? Because we rely on that capacity and our good bond rating and everything. So we would really need to see probably an apples to apples comparison, I guess, on why this instead of a traditional mud or just developer cost. I think that if y'all kind of put that together and maybe another meeting with staff, I don't think we're ready to go to PD&Z though, right? Maybe another meeting with y'all after we
I would say
get
after we
fleshed
get some
out.
of the better financing numbers, get even a recommendation from staff as to what we have. One second here, Bobby. But I think you said it perfectly there, Dan. I think the product itself is what we're looking for. You hear a lot of people in the surveys that we've done have said people want to protect that rural nature. We understand Manvel's changing. There's going to be growth. There's going to be higher density. But to have a product come before us that embodies what Manvel envisioned back in the day, I think that's an incredible thing, and I'm excited about that. Understanding how the numbers work is going to be important for us. Go ahead, Bobby.
No, but just a reminder that at some point, if you're ready to move forward or want to discuss the pros and cons of the financing, there's an executive session available for that under the what economic incentive to offer them. So at some point, we can have the discussions, have maybe even bond counsel and our FA there, and try to go through some of the figures and give you as much information to make your decision.
Yep. I think that's the appropriate next step. Do you guys have any questions for us?
So I would maybe propose, I've done this with other cities, just an MOU that kind of outlines the PID and TERS financing and kind of the items with the major thoroughfares, and maybe come back to y'all and staff with that to discuss it.
Our city attorney there is
No,
shaking his head.
Okay,
I don't think we're quite to the MOU just yet,
okay.
right?
It's a contract, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do
Eventually,
like
yes.
the idea of getting bond counsel and your FA to weigh in, because they're going to be able to tell you specifically if it has any impact, like you say, on your bond ratings and what that would look like. And so those are the folks who are going to be most familiar with your situation and why this would be a good idea or a bad idea, I think. And so I'll gather some more concrete information and a potential proposal and get it back to staff, and then I think maybe circling the wagons with the other consultants would be great.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think your overview here of PIDs and TERS and P3s, I think it was very beneficial for this meeting. I appreciate you guys covering that. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate
Amazing.
it.
Thank you.
All right, council, we will now open up all of the executive sessions. I do not believe we'll be able to get through everything, but we'll try to get through a few of them here first. And then what we'll do is we'll step back into the regular meeting and then wrap up anything we haven't finished. I know that we have a few people here that we want to make sure to make the best use of their time. So Dan and Bobby, I'll let you guys call back, whoever you want to call back first, based off of what we'll discuss. So we're going to open these up at 5:42 p.m. City Council will convene into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with attorney to discuss the following: pending or contemplated litigation, a settlement offer, or a matter of which the duty of the attorney requires it. Daniel Bryan v. City of Manvel, cause number 126070, CV. Carol S. Templeton v. Texas Department of Transportation and City of Manvel, cause number CSC 23-0077. And City Council will convene into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property to discuss the following: deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. So we'll reconvene from executive session a lot later than expected at 6:44 p.m. I appreciate everyone's patience during that time. Just give us 1 minute here for Councilman Perry, and then we will begin the regular meeting. Councilman Perry right there. So we are going to call this meeting to order here at 6:46 p.m. We have 6 of 7 members present. Councilwoman Sarmiento is not going to be able to join us tonight. We are now going to have our invocation, and our invocation tonight is going to be said by former Manvel Mayor Dolores Martin. So Mayor Martin, if you would please come forward and lead us in the prayer tonight. Thank you for being here.
Yes, I'm praying the Lord inspires me as I walk. Bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here this evening. Inspire us in what we do and what we say, always keeping in mind that we serve our citizens of Manvel who desperately need our help and our guidance in so many ways. Thank you, Lord, for always being with us. Inspire us today. In this we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. So next we have the inspirational reading, and we are going to have our Mayor Pro Tem, Jerome Hudson, lead us in this inspirational reading.
Good evening. This inspirational reading comes from Life Application Study Bible. One of my favorite scriptures, Proverbs 27:18. With all the problems and concerns a leader has, it can be easy to overlook the very people who most deserves attention. Faithful employees and volunteers, those who keep the fig trees, the people who stand behind you, who work and help you get the job done, deserves to be sharing your success. Be sure that in all your worrying, planning, and organizing, you don't forget the people who are helping you the most.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. If everyone will please join me in standing and saying the pledges. First, to the U.S. flag, pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To the Texas flag, honor and
The Texas flag, pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
All right, so we have 3 proclamations that we are going to read tonight. The first one I will be reading for National Nurses Week. And do we have any nurses that are here with us tonight? We do have one. Okay, well, thank you for being here. So what we'll do is we'll read out this proclamation, we'll read out the 2 next ones, and then we'll have you come forward and accept this proclamation and take a picture as well, and then we'll do the same for Public Works. Robbie, we'll have you come forward for that one, and then police, and good thing we got a lot of police officers here for that. So for this first proclamation that I'll read, it says, whereas National Nurses Week begins each year on May 6th and ends on May 12th, Florence Nightingale's birthday, honoring the invaluable contributions of nurses to our communities. And whereas the American Nurses Association, ANA has supported and promoted the nursing profession since 1896, with each state and territorial nurses association celebrating National Nurses Week to recognize the contributions of nurses and nursing to society. And whereas National Nurses Week includes National Nurses Day on May 6th and National Students Nurses Day on May 8th, celebrating the dedication and commitment of both present and future nurses to their professions. And whereas the history of National Nurses Week dates back to 1953 with various resolutions and proclamations. And in 1993, the ANA Board of Directors designated May 6th through 12th as permanent dates to observe National Nurses Week in 1994 and in all subsequent years. And whereas nurses are recognized as indispensable healthcare professionals providing tireless commitment and care to their patients 365 days a year, deserving of our gratitude and recognition. Now, therefore, I, Dan Davis, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Manvel, Texas, do hereby proclaim May 6 through 12, 2024 as National Nurses Week in the city of Manvel, Texas, and call upon all residents to join me in honoring and celebrating the nurses in our community for their dedication, compassion, and unwavering commitment to providing quality health care to all. Next, we will do National Public Works Week, and I believe we have our Mayor Pro Tem, Jerome Hudson, that's going to read that one for us.
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor of City of Manvel, National Public Works Week, May 19th through the 25th, 2024. Advancing quality of life for all. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and service that all of vital importance to sustain and all during these communities. And to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Manvel. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and service cannot be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, who are engineers, managers, employees of all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for building, improving, and protecting your nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Manvel to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian and Public Works Association. Now, therefore, Dan Davis, by virtue of the authority vested in him as mayor of the city of Manvel, Texas, do hereby proclaim May 19th through the 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week. In the city of Manvel, Texas, I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in advocating active events and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, to all to recognize the contribution they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life. And whereas I have in his hand.
You don't have to read that portion.
All right.
No, that's good.
All
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. And then the next we have Councilman Larry Acree, who is going to read our final proclamation for tonight, and then we'll take some photos. And that's for National Police Week, May 12th through the 18th, 2024. Councilman.
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, City of Manvel, whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Manvel Police Department, and whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, there are currently 24,067 law enforcement officers in the United States that have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated of public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 282 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 118 officers killed in 2023 and 164 officers killed in the previous years. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 36th Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13, 2024, and whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of the National Police Week, which will be observed this year, May 12th through the 18th, and whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now, therefore, by the virtue of Dan Davis, authority vested as mayor of the city of Manvel, Texas, do hereby proclaim May 12th through the 18th, 2024 as National Police Week in the city of Manvel, Texas, and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation.
Thank you, Councilman. So, Council, if you'll join me in the front, we'll take the photo first for National Nurses Week. And, ma'am, if you could come forward and join us. We'll have Robbie say a few words here.
Good afternoon. I'm Robbie Hall, the Public Works Director of Manvel. I actually been doing this for like 24 years, and I really enjoy it, what I do, and really enjoy Manvel. And I wish I had some of my guys up here with me, but everybody had to go home after work. So, but yeah, I enjoy it. Appreciate it. Thank y'all for the proclamation.
Absolutely. Appreciate what you do. All right, next we have the proclamation for National Police Week. So, Chief, we'll have you come forward, and we'll have all of the police department officers that are here. We'll have you guys come forward as well. All of you got to come forward. Come on. Come on. And we're going to make Captain Day say a few words after this as well. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, next we have staff recognition, and Chief Trailer, I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Good evening. Hold on a minute. Just so I make sure I read the right thing. Good evening, council. Hadn't stood in front of y'all in a while. This evening, we want to recognize the nominee of the 100 Club Missouri County Officer of the Year and the Officer of the Year for the City of Manvel Police Department, Detective Corporal Evelyn Abundis. Every year, officers from each department of Missouri County select an officer as their Officer of the Year and submit their names to the 100 Club of Missouri County as a candidate for this prestigious award. This year, the members of the Manvel Police Department selected Corporal Evelyn Abundis for outstanding performance with the Criminal Investigations Divisions for this year and years past. Corporal Abundis was hired in 2013 as a patrol officer and was reassigned to the Criminal Investigations Division in 2018. She was actually one of the 5 that I had to hire when I was hired, because we were 5 down, and I think she's still the only one remaining of the 5 that I hired in 2013. During her time with the Criminal Investigations Division, she's been exceptional in her duties, where she has solved several major crimes and has become the go-to person within the division. She was assigned as the property room manager, where she oversees property and evidence, all the while investigating criminal cases. In 2023, she was promoted to patrol corporal. Although we have reinforced the Criminal Investigation Division with several other investigators, she still plays a vital role due to her training and her tenure with the division. I want to congratulate her on her accomplishments and being selected for this award. Evelyn, would you come up, please? You have a nice little plaque for her so she can display on her wall. And I told her she had to give a speech.
She does. All right, Detective Corporal, you got to give a speech.
I'm not good with speeches, so she will agree with that.
Well, we can.
Oh, you did? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Detective Corporal, I have a few questions for you here. If you're not going to give us a speech, I'll ask you some questions. So you've been with Manvel now for 11 years. Tell us a little bit about what your time's been, how your time's been with the city of Manvel.
So yeah, it's going to be 11 years this July. Obviously, as Chief Trailer said, I was one of the first hires when he started. So I've watched it grow tremendously, all the changes that Chief has made. I mean, when I started, we had like 1 person on duty at a time, no backup or anything. We still had Crown Vics. Our radios didn't even work in Rodeo Palms, so half the time Brazoria County was having to go welfare checks on us all the time. So now it's, you know, crazy seeing how we have like 3 or 4 or 5 officers on duty. Every shift has a supervisor. We've been lucky to have, you know, all of our vehicles replaced. We always get, you know, any equipment that we need. So I think we have been very lucky, not just with our chief, who always takes everything that we need into consideration and make sure that we do our job properly, have the safety equipment that we need. So I've seen it go basically from the ground up. So I've been, 11 years here, and it's definitely taken sorry, I'm like stuttering now.
No,
a turn on for the better. So can't wait to see when it grows.
Something that you've learned to love about Manvel over these past 11 years?
So I've had a while to get to know and network with other officers from other agencies, and I do have to say that it's more of a family feel, not just with the citizens, but even people that work here. Most people that work here are very family-oriented, community-oriented. So I've been lucky, too, where we don't have to face what a lot of other agencies do when it comes down to all the police stuff, the negativity that's been going around. We've personally never really experienced that. We have citizens that come in and are always thanking us for everything that we do, bringing us, different things just to show their appreciation. So it's been great. I love it here. So, yeah.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for a new police station?
Oh, about 100. We've been waiting for that since day one. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for all that you do for this city. Congratulations, and we'll let you enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, so I believe we don't have any public comments, Tammy. That's a first no, I like that. We took it all up with executive session. So next we will go to the city manager update. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The first three updates are actually coming on the heels of Public Works Week, so they're Public Works related. Robbie wanted me to mention, he had the microphone, so I thought he was going to do it, but he did not. They're going to be participating in the cook-off for Public Works Week, and our team name is the Maverick Grill Masters, is that right? And Brother Ray is the grill master himself? Okay, he's going to be the captain. So do we get to vote on that, or, because
I'm a judge.
Bobby's a judge, so just let us know. That's this Wednesday, right? All right, very, very exciting. What's that? Oh, the 22nd. Okay. Let's see. Also, Public Works. The work in front of Rodeo Palms, the street markings in front of the gated section that council approved. Hopefully, that's what's going to be taking place this Wednesday. There we go. Yep. Hope weather permitting, that should be happening on this Wednesday. And the slope paving is completed. Hold on, at Acre Lake. I got it right the first time. Yeah, the slope paving is complete out there, so it looks fantastic. Thanks for. I will send y'all a picture, and we can put one up. Put some up. We've got some good pictures from out there today. So it's back flowing again, and I guess the drainage district was going to go double check the work. Branch Construction did that work for us, right? Yep. So I'm very excited about that. Next two things are personnel related. I sent y'all an email, but just to say it out loud, very excited. We have Jorge Reyna, just started last Monday for us. He's our development manager. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because he was the development coordinator for Brazoria County for about 5 years. And then he worked for the city of League City before that. So he's got experience at the city level and then also at the county level. So that's a great hire for us. And the position that he's taking, if you're wondering what the development manager position is, that's not one that we had before. But what we've done is kind of combined what Elaine has been doing in the permits department and some of what Joe's used to do, Joe's Abraham, when he left. And so it's actually a new position there, which allowed me to do something that I'm really excited about. And we brought Elaine Graham over, and she is now the executive assistant to the city manager. So she's actually in this building. So as I mentioned before, she's planning to retire probably later this year. So this gives them a way, if she's not in proximity, they're going to have to learn, the things. So she's not physically going to be there, but she's still going to be available to help them out. So that's really excited. She actually got moved over today. So she was all smiles on Friday when we visited with her, and again today. So excited about that. And then let's see, just a couple of calendar things. MEDC is this Wednesday night. Just a reminder on that. PD&Z is next Monday night, but also Tammy, next Monday night, is that our special council meeting? To canvass the election results. Yes, ma'am. You want to?
Yes, so we will have the special meeting that you guys approved at your 2 meetings ago to canvass the election. That one, we will canvass the election, and then both candidates will be sworn in, but then we will have a ceremonial swearing in at the next regular council meeting.
That's it, night.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tammy. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Any comments or questions for the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Hudson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilman Perry. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We have no items removed from the consent agenda, so we will move on to the regular agenda. Agenda item number 1, Rosie, we'll be sending this one over to you. So as Dan said, if you can get the microphone ready. we have consideration and possible action to approve an interlocal cooperation agreement with Brazoria County for collection of taxes and PID assessments for City of Manvel. Rosie?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This basically is the interlocal government agreement with the county to assess our taxes, calculate the rates, collect on them, invoice our taxpayers, and do any collections needed if they're past due.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. Just a quick question that I had for you. Is this an increase in cost for us based off of the terms of this agreement? Because I know they charge a certain cent amount per parcel within the city. Is that an increase or is that staying the same?
It seems like it's a small increase. I don't know what we were set at in the past. Have a call into the county because we could not find an agreement in-house. This is the first agreement I've seen and Tammy has seen.
Okay. Do we know how much of this is going to cost us on a yearly basis?
This past year, it cost us $73,000.
Okay, how much would it cost us if we did this on our own?
Probably 3 times the amount.
Okay. So there's a big cost savings of going with the county, and we need to get an agreement in place, especially because we couldn't find a historical one.
That's correct.
Okay. Any comments or questions from council?
Straightforward.
All right, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Councilman Oplager. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Hudson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Rosie. Next, we have agenda item number 2, which is consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2024-R-13. And Dan, we'll send this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we try and update the design criteria manual roughly on an annual basis. This will be the 16th update since 2008, which is pretty exciting that we've kept up with it. And there's always something to tweak. If it's okay, Mayor, I've got 10 items that I wanted to bring to your attention, so I'll kind of go through those somewhat quickly. Hopefully you have it in front of you. If not, it's in your packet. Page 17 was the first one I wanted to mention. It seems obvious, but it's something that we noticed. Actually, Percy, our associate engineer, noticed that right now, our design criteria says that we don't want wastewater manholes, sanitary sewer manholes, within a driveway or a street or a sidewalk. But we're also proposing that we add parking stalls because, sure enough, if we need to get into that manhole for whatever reason and somebody's parking over it makes it very difficult to get to it. So that was never in there before, so that was a great find on his part. Next one is page 22. And the mayor and I talked about this a little bit. So even though practically speaking, and it's in our code, it's just not in our design criteria manual, whenever a water line is extended, that it is extended to and through, as we say. So it goes all the way to the edge of the property line. We experienced that whenever we did the extension of the water line out in front of the current police station. So if you notice, there's always been that hydrant that's just a little bit further, and that's why. So we're just finally capturing that in the design criteria manual as well. And then a couple at the very bottom of page 22 and the top of page 23. So just putting some parameters in there for minimum lines for commercial and irrigation lines. Again, those are the lines, those are the actual service lines. So on a residential home, we're going to have a minimum 1-inch line that goes to the home. Now, most homes aren't big enough that they need a 1-inch meter. They're going to drop down to a 3/4-inch meter, but at least the 1-inch service is there. Same idea on commercial. We've just never had it hard coded in the design criteria manual that the minimum service line is a 2-inch, and then if they need a 2-inch line, well, then they're already good there. If their design professional or plumber says that they only need a 1-inch line or a 1-inch or 3/4-inch meter, then they can do that. Obviously, if they need something bigger than a 2-inch service, then they're going to need a bigger line that they would have to run themselves. And we do see that on some big developments. They'll just run a big 8-inch line, and then manifold off of that on all their different connections. The main thing is that we need to be able to get to those lines if there's anything that needs to be serviced. Once it hits the meter from there on, then it's their responsibility. But from the meter this side of the right-of-way, it's ours. Page 28 is the next one. And again, just kind of hard coding it. This is something in practice whenever a new generator is coming in. We always try and recommend that they have a natural gas generator instead of a diesel generator. But now we're putting that in words. Natural gas generators are to be installed where natural gas is available. So if for some reason, whoa, something went weird. Okay, yeah, I'm picking up in stereo. Page 31. Water line services shall be designed for the meters to be at the front of the property or residential lot. We don't see this too often, but every once in a while, someone will want to have a meter at the back of their property. Especially on a commercial development, it's very difficult because then if we can't physically get to it through some type of an egress easement, or it's on the other side of a fence, there's no reason to put obstacles in our way if we need to be able to get in there and take a look at that meter. So practically speaking, this has been done for many years, but again, we're just trying to hard code that into the design criteria manual. Page 48. Again, manholes, try and keep those out of the parking stalls. This is for storm sewer now. Page 49, same thing with inlets in parking stalls. If we, when possible. Sometimes that's the only way that they can design it. An inlet's not quite as bad, but again, if you're out and about and you're parking and it looks like rain, don't park where the inlet is, because obviously the pavement is graded to drain to that spot. So you may not be able to get into your vehicle, whenever you get back to it. So that's just sort of a common sense thing. So when possible, try and keep the inlets out of the parking stalls. Page 53, and it kind of goes on to page 54. So this was something that has been discussed quite a bit lately by a couple of council members. So the infamous pump detention. So what we have right now is we have it hard coded and have had for several years, no pumped detention or floodplain mitigation facilities, period. The mayor had asked, and Crystal had asked as well, could we come up with some verbiage that could potentially, if for some reason council wanted to allow pump detention, what would those provisions look like? So what we came up with is we still don't recommend that pumped floodplain mitigation facilities be allowed, period. So if you're in the floodplain, we still don't allow pumped systems, period. But pump detention facilities could be allowed by city council on a case-by-case basis, which is essentially what you've got right now, with the following criteria. Number one, for non-residential developments only. So I could have just said commercial, but that would include anything. It might not be commercial, it might be industrial, it might be a church, it could be a school or whatever, but just the point is that it's not residential. In fact, number two, no residences even within 1,000 feet of the pump facility. So if something malfunctions, the pumps don't work, they don't come on when they're supposed to, all the water that they were supposed to be pumping doesn't wind up in your living room or whoever's, within 1,000 feet. Number three, that a backup natural gas generator is provided for the pump facility. Again, with diesel, there are lots of good diesel generators out there, but if you can't physically get to the generator to load it back up with diesel, then so what? So natural gas is much more reliable. Number four, at least 50% of the required detention is achieved by a gravity system, so they're actually only pumping the other half, and I think that might have been Harry's idea. That was a good idea. Some of the drainage districts use that criteria as well, and that leads me to number five, that the corresponding drainage district obviously approves the pump facility as well. While we're on that page 54, the next one is all non-residential detention ponds would have a perimeter fence. And that leads into page 56, which, page 56 is the pump detention facilities verbiage again, just because the spot that it's in, it might be difficult to find, so kind of the belt and suspenders approach there. Page 62, that's where I wanted to get. So that's David Land's, you'd be happy to see that that's in there, the actual diagram. We do have that in ordinance already for the fences, but now we've got an actual graphic to go with the 6-foot fence and 8-foot fence details. And then finally, page 65, some updates from our new fire marshal that Shauna and JD actually went through the whole design criteria manual and noticed that we had a couple of inconsistencies with the fire code. So we're just capturing those once and for all. So.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that overview. Council, any comments or questions? What I'll just say, Dan and team, appreciate you guys going through this. I know, Dan, you answered a lot of my questions. The main one that I had was if we require for commercial businesses and it's a 2-inch service line, that doesn't necessitate what their meter might be. Because, for example, if you have a 2-inch meter, that's up to $12,000 in impact fees, whereas a 3/4 would only be about $3,000 in impact fees. And so we added language just to clarify that your service line does not necessitate your meter size driving the impact fees. But I also appreciate we strive to be very accountable and transparent in what we do. And I know you reached out to a few developers. I know people reached out to business owners to get feedback on these proposed changes. That way we can make sure to have something that the community really buys into. So I think you captured the pump detention, addressed my questions. It looks like you've addressed Councilman Lands. Maybe he has a question here. And so I'll turn it over to him now. Councilman?
Just one. So the pump detention cannot be within 1,000 feet of residents.
Yes, sir.
What happens if down the road homes get built closer? What are we going to do about that? I mean, it's just grandfathered in, don't even worry about it? And
I would think so. Yes, sir. I mean, that would probably, if it was a rezoning was involved, I guess that would be something we'd have to consider. But I think, yes, the short answer, they'd be grandfathered. There's one pumped facility at the storage place. Oh, goodness, up by Sonic. They've got a pump system. It's behind everything. What's that? Yeah, and Fagioli's has one, but neither one of those are anywhere close to residential. So those are only two that I know of in operation right now. And those were long before we had a staff, quite frankly. Yes, sir.
thank you.
And Dan, just to clarify that, the DCM is in place for if you are going to actually develop your site and build. So if you're an existing business, you already have something in place, and then homes come after the fact. It's not at that point that you're doing something new and designing something new.
That's a good point. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good question, Councilman. Any other comments or questions from council? Do I have a motion to approve? We have a motion from Councilman Lands. Do I have a?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Hudson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We will now move on to agenda item number 3. Consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2024-R-14. Dan, we will turn this over to you.
I was making eye contact with Percy, telling him thank you for all of his hard work on that. I failed to say that. I thought I saw him in the back, and then, anyway, let's see. Yes, item number 3, very exciting. We had, our 4th day of planning, and we got across the finish line on a couple of items. The first one is a much more condensed mission statement than what we have currently. Again, just to say it out loud, not to add words to our night, but the current mission statement for the City of Manvel is, the City of Manvel will continue to be a unique, vibrant, growth-managed community that will meet the needs of its citizens through the efforts of local government and civic-minded individuals by promoting well-planned development, cost-effective professional management, and competent and responsive municipal services. The proposal that we came up with as a staff and council combined in this room last Monday, a new mission statement that would say the City of Manvel is a safe and responsible community embracing the values of our past, present, and future citizens. Very succinct. We also identified 7 core values, which would be quality, service, transparency, accountability, stewardship, engagement, and safety. And so you have before you a resolution to adopt these formally. Tammy and I were talking about it, that, it's been within a document here or budget here, but what a great way to sort of put a bow on all the hard work that the staff and council has done together. So,
thank you, Dan. Councilman Oplager, you have any comments on that?
I like it. I just like it.
Like it.
I'm ready to have it on the agenda.
Dan and Tammy, what I would love to see is to have us make sure we get this posted on the city website, put it on social media as well, Brooke, find ways to promote that, update our city agenda with the new mission statement. And there's some ways that we can get this displayed within City Hall as well here within the council chambers and some other spots. Get it in the new police station, the Keith Traylor Criminal Justice Center, get it within Public Works Building, and some of those other facilities would be great. So that way our employees as well as anybody in the public knows this is what our mission is. I'm going to slip that in as much as I can, Chief. Any other comments or questions from council? All right. Councilman Oplager, can I get a motion from you?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilman Lands. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We will now move on to agenda item number 4. And Chad, if you want to are you going to speak from there? All right.
Yes,
so I'm
sir.
going to read this one and we'll turn it over to you. Consideration and possible action to approve resolution 2024-R-15. Chad?
Afternoon, Mayor, Council. As you know, for the past few months, we as directors and staff has been working diligently on the personnel policy. That's been years since we really did a deep dive into the verbiage. So we had a lot of areas that we needed to concentrate in. Tonight, I'm just going to go over just a few areas that we did make changes to. One, we had a lot of verbiage where we changed my position from HR manager to personnel director. We did those change. We had a lot of he and she inside the personnel policy, so we went ahead and changed that to the employee. Some changes we made to help with the employees was increasing the amount of sick leave that an employee can actually donate. We were pretty limited on that to where this is going to help whenever we do have employees that are out for a short amount of time that we would normally use short-term disability for. Currently, we do not have that as far as our benefits plan. So if an employee is newly hired or what have you, they would have to use donations from more senior employees. So we're giving our employees more flexibility to do that. We also made a change on personal leave. With the current policy, an employee starts off with 10 days of leave, and they have to wait 5 years before that increases up to 15. With these changes, we've moved that to where year 1 through 3 is still at 10, but at year 3, you move up to 12. So you're getting a little bit more instead of having to wait the 5-year periods. This, from what we've seen, is really going to help us out as far as retention is concerned and giving the employees a little bit more flexibility on their personal leave. Another area that I was very passionate on was bereavement. With the current policy, we had 3 days of bereavement. We've actually upped that to where it's 5 days if it's an immediate family. As we all know, if a death happens, a lot of us are traveling to other states. Myself, I'm traveling to another country. 3 days really doesn't do much for you. So I was happy to see that this increased to 5 days. We also made some modifications to the dress code, just to kind of address our more modern workforce. And also we added some verbiage on the family medical leave section to as far as injury for line of duty or injury leave with our police officers. So this was lacking, so we were able to get that put in as well. So we're hoping that you'll consider this and approve these changes.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that overview. Council, any comments or questions? One of the things is, I know Councilwoman Sarmiento is going to want to have some feedback and discussion on this, so I would like to see us table it tonight so that way she can join us in 2 weeks and have discussion on this. But between now and then, take time to review it. But tonight, are there any comments or feedback? I know it's also, there's a lot of pages here, 124 pages to read through, but want to open it up. Councilman Opliger, do you have something?
I do. In the safety part, where is it, 4.05? If an employee sees something that the employee believes to be an unsafe act or unsafe condition, the employee shall immediately report to a supervisor or management. So they can't introduce the stop work authority type thing. You know, if it's not safe, they should have the right to stop the work, not just report it.
Yes, sir. In fact, you're absolutely correct. We instill on all of our employees, when you see something, you stop.
You see something, say something.
Yep,
Just
say
don't stand there.
it, stop, and correct the problem. It doesn't matter if it is a employee that is the first day on the job, senior manager, or what have you. If they see something there to say something, stop the job, see if we can get that corrected.
Okay, so should that be, instead of saying report to a supervisor, should that say you have the right to stop the work?
That can be changed, yes.
Right? I mean, I could be talked with y'all, but the world I came from, we had the right to stop work at any time if it wasn't safe, but it was also written in it, you know, so you had something to stand on, right?
Yes, sir.
Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments? One of the things that I would like to see is on the cover letter, if we can make sure to put our new mission statement on the cover letter for the employee handbook, that would be great. The other thing is I didn't see anything in here for paternity or maternity leave. Is that covered within our employee handbook at all?
It's covered as far as in our benefits, as far as what is covered. Currently, we don't have anything as far as short-term disability. So from that area, we fall under the family medical leave to where they are allowed to use their personal and sick time for that up to, again, I don't have the policy in front of me. I believe it's up to 8 weeks or 10 weeks for that. So they are allowed. We don't have specific verbiage in there for paternity, but that is something that we could look at.
Yeah, so my brother, my youngest brother and his wife, she just gave birth to their first child, which we're very excited about that. His name's Arthur, healthy baby, beautiful baby. And my brother is a teacher. And what I found out is as teachers in the state of Texas, you can have paternity leave, but it is without pay, and you are only given 2 weeks of paternity leave. And then maternity is not that great either if you are a mother and a teacher. And that, to me, is unacceptable in the greatest state in the nation, that as a teacher, he had to go without pay for 2 weeks to take care of his wife, who went through a very intense labor experience. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I would like over the next 2 weeks, if we can just kind of sit down and maybe see if we can define some language about that, because I know the stress, on top of having a newborn, their first child, then the stress of him not getting paid for 2 weeks, and then they live by themselves out in San Marcos, now having to go back to work as well. It's something I'm going to be speaking with our state legislation about next session, and I want to make sure that we take care of our employees that find themselves in that similar situation too. So
Yes, sir.
We'll set some time to talk about that. Councilman Lands.
Dan and Robbie, our crew, back in the day when I did construction.
We had toolbox safety meetings all the time. Do we have that here with our crews?
Yes, sir.
You do? Maybe go over, near misses or whatever else, just to bring awareness up. How often do we do those? I'm sorry? Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
They do it while they're eating breakfast from Councilman Lands, right? Well, I just want to say great work. I know that staff has put a ton of time and effort into this, and I've been reviewing it and reading it as well. I know it's been a long journey to get it to this point. Excited that it's on the agenda and to get this wrapped up in 2 weeks, and just want to express my appreciation to everybody for their work on this. Anything else, Dan? Chad, for you guys?
No, sir.
All right. So what I'll do is I will make a motion to table this agenda item. Do I have a second? Second. We have a second from Councilman Acree. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion to table passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have agenda item number 5. I'll introduce this item, and then Bobby will turn it over to you. This is consideration of possible action to direct staff on a facility use policy. So one of the reasons that this came about is we have our local dance clinic that's right up the road here across from the church on Masters Road. They wanted to see about using the front parking lot to do, or the back parking lot to do a car wash. And we identified that there was no facility use policy for City Hall. If someone wanted to use the council chambers, or if they wanted to use the parking lot for something, there were no parameters around if they were to use it, how would they use it. We also then had a farmer's market that came up and wants to look at using Croy Park, and another nonprofit organization that wanted to hold an event at Croy Park. And we've been talking about naming facilities, and noticed that there wasn't a policy around that. And so what we're looking for tonight is direction from council to staff about, over the next probably 3 meetings, kind of phasing it in, doing one meeting where we have a facility use policy before us to review and adopt. Next meeting to have a parks and recreation policy to potentially adopt, because right now we do have a parks policy, rental policy, but it's specifically for sports, not for any other types of activities, and then also get a facility naming policy in place and kind of hit those over the next few meetings. And Bobby, I know he's been diving into a lot of this with Tammy as well, looking at what we've had in the history and in the past, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Mayor, I think you covered it succinctly. I mean, we have a parks policy designed really for use by teams and/or leagues. And Tammy has a history of how that's worked or hasn't worked. And I don't know we really have anybody that's using that at this point right now. For the facilities, namely City Hall, and I guess it could be extended at some point to the new police station or Public Works or something if we were prepared to do something. But right now, we're working on a policy that would be for City Hall, either the parking lot, potentially this room, and maybe even the conference room. But it would require fees and cleanup and supervision, especially for after hours and on weekends. Obviously, we couldn't turn it over to somebody without somebody from the city being here. But we're looking at developing these policies, and the mayor would like to have a goal of one per meeting. We'd have the facilities use, then probably an updated parks, and then the naming facility policy. And of course, without a Parks and Rec person, we would kind of have to do this at the staff level as kind of a collaborative. But at some point, we anticipate hopefully having a Parks and Rec person that would be intimately involved with this and might need some revision, or I don't know how fast we would move on that. But so I think we're looking at doing that starting maybe even at the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bobby. Any comments or questions from council about that? So I think from a direction standpoint tonight, just make a motion saying we direct staff to begin drafting these policies and phase them over the next 3 meetings. Would that be succinct for you guys? Okay. So I'll do that. I'll make a motion to direct staff on drafting the 3 policies as mentioned to bring forward over our next 3 meetings. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Hudson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Next, we have agenda item number 6. This is consideration of possible action to direct staff on a homestead exemption. And Rosie, I'll introduce this one, and then you have something, while you hand that out, I'll introduce it. So, council, we talked about this at our budget time last year, but it was a little bit too late in the ball game to talk about this. And if we are going to consider this, one of the things that we will have to look at is what will be the financial impact of a homestead exemption. Because there is, technically speaking, a loss of revenue that comes from that, but that certainly could be made up with the growth that we're seeing residentially and commercially within the city. Over 60% of cities in Brazoria County offer a homestead exemption. This would be something that is not, in Manvel we have, if you're over 65, you get a $90,000 homestead exemption. If you're a disabled veteran, you get a homestead exemption. But if you're somebody, we'll use Councilman Perry or myself, if you're, let's say, a 55-year-old individual that isn't a disabled veteran, you have no homestead exemption for the city of Manvel. You have what is available by the state, homestead exemption, but nothing specific for the city. The city of Pearland offers a 2.5% homestead exemption. The city of Alvin just increased theirs to 20% homestead exemption. And when we talked about this last year, Councilman Perry made mention of something. We want to, as we talk about the tax rate, make sure that we don't drop the tax rate so low that it limits us in the future. But at the same point in time, as he mentioned, we want to find ways to save the taxpayers dollars. And as a fast growth city, that's a perfect time to implement a homestead exemption. It's also something attractive to home buyers to come to Manvel. And so this is the initial of the conversation to kind of see if council wants to consider anything, give some direction to staff. And I believe it's not until maybe
July the 1st. We got to let the county know by June 30th.
June 30th is when we'd ultimately have to make a decision by. So that's a very quick, high-level introduction. And Rosie, I'll turn it over to you.
I just passed to you a table that I created this morning, actually. The top part, of course, is the original tax roll that we worked with on our budget. And then I did a couple of different scenarios, bringing down the different percentages. If you notice, the INS, which is the debt service amount, stayed the same throughout the different scenarios because that will not change. Your TERS will not change. The only thing that gets impacted is your M&O, which is your operating expense value. The first one was for 2.5% less value, and you're looking at about $12,000 homestead exemption for savings per household of $67. The second level was the 5%, and again, it's about $24,000 exemption for a savings of $134 per household. And it would mean a lost revenue for the city of $525,000 there. The 10% value is almost at a $48,000 homestead exemption for a savings per household of $268,000, $1,051,859 of lost revenue for the city. The 15% value is about a $72,000 exemption for a savings of $401 per household and a lost revenue for the city of $1,577,789. And the last amount that I did was a 20%, which is almost a $95,500 exemption for a savings of $535 per household and a lost revenue of $2,103,718.
Thank you, Rosie. A few questions for you here. This certified value, this is residential and commercial, correct?
That is correct.
So we need to get a breakout for just residential.
I based this on 3,930 households, which is what the county shows would be getting homestead exemption. Excuse me, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
That I based it on the last year's tax roll-up certification, and it has there how many exemption would qualify for the household exemption based on other entities. So that's the volume of households that I used. The 3,930.
3,930. Okay, and this certified value, where did you get that? Where did that number derive from?
I got that from these county from last year's tax roll-ups when we did the budget that they send us. That's what I got that one from.
Okay, so that's
1.878 billion on the values.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it's multiplied by the 56 cents that we're.
So that so the 3,930, 3,900 homestead eligible properties make up that 1.8. You've subtracted from our overall value out everything else.
Yes.
So basically that 3,930 makes up that 1.8.
Yes.
Okay. Do we know what our revenue projections are based off of the preliminary values provided by the county?
No, not yet.
Okay. When do we expect to know that?
I should be working on those within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Do you think we will have a good preliminary understanding of those prior to June 30th? Because as I look at this, for example, to save the taxpayers $67, which is significant as somebody that lives, quite frankly, paycheck to paycheck, $67 for a year, that's significant. That's a good amount of groceries for my family, unless Bidenomics continues to go up. But that $262,000, looking at that, I mean, that could easily be made up in revenue projections.
That's correct.
But when you start getting down to the 1 million, that's a little bit bigger, but it's tough to say, what we'll be at until we know the revenue projections. So when do you expect to have a good standing as to what we'll be at?
I right now know the overall for the city, but I'm still waiting on the TERS numbers because, of course, with our TERS, it's most of the growth is in the TERS area this year.
Okay. So from a process standpoint, sorry, Council, I know I'm hogging a lot of time here. Would something like this take 2 readings to pass, Tammy, or would it just be?
I think it would have to be an ordinance, Bob. I'm sorry.
I don't know if legally required or not to be an ordinance.
Yeah, do you have one?
Yep, on our calendar, we had identified June 3rd as the first reading of the ordinance and June 17th as the second reading.
Okay. So, Rosie, do you feel like by that first meeting in June, you'll have a good understanding of our revenue projections and what that will be compared to what we would potentially lose in revenue based off of implementing?
I believe so. I just need to have a target number that you guys are wanting to work with. Are we wanting the 5%, the 10%? just somewhere that I can work into the numbers and not just be working with,
A lot. It's a lot that's there
Yes,
that you're planning
exactly.
based off of. Absolutely.
so we're looking maybe at the 10% as a maximum or the 20% as a, whatever you tell me, that way I can actually work the numbers correctly.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I'll give you my recommendation, my preference here in a minute, but I want to open it up to council to see if you guys have any comments or questions, or if you guys want to take time to ponder this, we can put it on our next council agenda to give Rosie the parameters and then come back forward at our first meeting in June. Where are you guys at?
I think we need
Councilman
more
Lance.
Explaining or understanding the numbers.
Some of this, I mean, I just, not 100% sure I'm understanding, the lost revenues. There's two columns here, basically, looks like, on the left side and the right side.
Okay, the lost revenue is basically the decrease of the value based on that exemption that we would lose as the city overall for the budget that year. The savings per household, of course, that's what every household would save on these 3,930 households. And that's, of course, based on last year's numbers. The loss of value, that's what we decreased in the value by giving this exemption out. And the last number, the per household, that's the actual exemption that we would be recommending per household to get this number.
So to translate that, the biggest number, the two biggest numbers, Councilman Lance, to look at, on the left-hand side, it's those two highlighted columns. The first one is the loss of revenue to the city. So for example, if we did a 2.5% homestead exemption, the city, as it stands today, if we had no revenue growth coming into the city, we would be down $262,000. Now, we're expecting more revenue to come in, sales tax revenue, property tax revenue, et cetera. But the average household, we'll use mine as an example, would save $67 in its tax bill to the city. A year, based off of this going into place. So the columns on the right are more so values. The columns on the left are the real financial impact of the two. And for me, in order to make a proper judge of this, I'd need to understand what our revenue projections are. I'm assuming that we're going to bring in, if it's like last year, we'll be bringing in north of $1 million in new revenue. And if that's the case, then, eating $262,000 into that isn't a huge hit. But it's just, what are our revenue projections? What are we expecting budgetary needs to be compared to saving the taxpayer some money while also not hitting the tax rate for future years? All I know is that the citizens of Manvel have seen a tax payment increase each of the past 5 years, and it's at a breaking point. It's at a breaking point for my family. It's at a breaking point for other families. And while I certainly understand and can appreciate the fact that the city has many, many needs, our city employees have many, many needs, at some point something's going to break. And if we don't do something for our citizens, other government entities aren't doing it, the state's not doing it. If we don't do something, our citizens are hurting. And I think this is a phenomenal opportunity to do something. So for me, looking at this, 20% would be really tough to do this year. 15% would be really tough to do. So I'd be looking at, personally, Rosie, capping it at 10 at the most.
Okay.
And falling somewhere in between that. And these are just kind of bullet points. Maybe it's, we go somewhere between 2.5 to 5, or we'll see what that is. But knowing past year's revenue projections, if that holds true for this year, that's kind of where I sit. Any comments or questions from council? None?
Would that be the consensus then, to try and run the numbers on the 10%?
10% or less.
Yeah, let's cap it at 10.
Okay. Councilman Perry said let's cap it at 10 and run the numbers based off of these three different scenarios, 10, 5, and 2.5, and look at revenue projections compared to the loss of revenue with the homestead cap and what that means for the citizens. And just to let you guys know, when the city of Pearland talked a lot about this, their big thing was, because they don't have a lot of revenue growth that's coming to the city, if they went above 2.5%, it would be a big financial hit for them. Whereas the city of Alvin, when they increased theirs to 20, they said, we have so much more growth that's coming If we have to bite the bullet for 1 year, we're more than going to make up for that in the long run. And so the time to implement a homestead exemption is when you're at a fast growth, not when you've plateaued. So quite frankly, if we're going to do it, now's the time to do it. And if we're not going to do it now, then it's never going to happen for our citizens. And that's the reality of the situation. So I think, Dan, you have what you need. I've belabored the point enough, so I'll get off my soapbox and we'll move forward.
Yeah, I think 10% is good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Councilman. And Rosie, thank you for putting these together. I like your colors. Very nice colors on it. So
Thank you.
appreciate that. All right, so what we'll do, I guess, is look for that first meeting in June to have something on the agenda. All right.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, moving on here to, do you guys need a formal motion for that? What do you guys think? All right, sounds good. Agenda item number 7, Chief, will be turning this item over to you. This is update on emergency management protocol in the event of a hurricane. Chief?
Good evening again. What I have is I sat down the other day and I came up with some bullet points on where we're at and what we've done to prepare for this year's hurricane season. And to keep in mind, the emergency management is not only for storms and hurricanes, it's for any other event we might have which would put the city in need of emergency management operations. But what we plan for every year is what we're most in need of is plans and operations for hurricanes, because we'll see that more than anything. So basically, just some of the things I came up with that we've been working on is the emergency plan and the related annexes that we are required to have in place through the state Texas Department of Emergency Management. We updated those last year, and we're current up through 2027 on those. We are in the process. I met with the state planning coordinator, and we're working on digitizing these annexes to where they'll be easier to update in 2027 when this comes around. So we have like 3 years to work on this process to get all these back in the digital format. Easier for everybody to read and understand basically what it is. We did a test run last week of our Emergency Operations Center to make sure we have all the equipment necessary to initiate the emergency operations. We have everything we need, all the equipment that we need for right now. Right now, our emergency operations is based out of the conference room because really that's all we have. When the new police station is built, we will have a fully operational emergency operations center that is standalone and ready at a moment's notice. Basically, what we'll do is we'll bring equipment in, we'll set up the phones, our chief positions, and be able to run our emergency management out of that. Our personnel training, we have all our personnel that has been trained through the NIMS, the Incident Command Training. The only persons that need to finish or finalize their training are the new ones that have been hired, and that's part of the onboarding process through the city side of it and for the department side of it, is that they're required to go through specific training. If they're in supervisory position, it goes even into more in-depth training because they could be in the Emergency Operations Center. Most everybody has received that training. And I'm sorry, but I just drew a blank. But I think in June or July, we're actually having a 300 and 400 training that's being hosted by the Emergency Services District. The 300 and 400 training is in June. The 300 and 400 training is specific to persons that are in the Operations Center. And I think we have one person that I know of that is attending that. Everybody else is, okay, that's 2. Everybody else has been pretty much up to speed on that training. And, okay, we'll just move on. I double-checked with Tammy that our contracts for our debris mitigation are up to date and they don't expire until 2025. I think we did those in our 2-year agreements. We did those last year, so we're up to date on that. We've identified potential space for housing employees if needed, and we're currently looking for a secondary location. It's always good to have 2 locations, but we've been in touch with Pastor Martin at the Church of the Harvest, and he said he would allow us to house employees at the church if need be. The only problem with that is we have another Harvey incident. You can't get to the church, or you couldn't back then because of the water. So we're looking for a secondary location. And what we're trying to do is reach out to some hotels to where we'll be able to have be able to block a set of rooms for the employees to be able to stay in. If not, we'll just be bunking where we can bunk. And we've done that before. Tomorrow, I am meeting with, and I forgot his name, the manager of HEB, Malcolm. We're going to be talking about supplies and food rations for the event we have an incident. We'll be able to have a place where we can get food and rations for the personnel that are working. During Harvey, we didn't have to worry about that because the city came together and believe me, they fed us quite regularly. I think I gained 20 pounds in the 2 weeks we were sitting in there. But we're going to have that set up as a contingency. One of the things that the mayor brought up is something that we do, but we're going to start introducing that within the next couple of weeks as we try to do public service announcements through social media. Last year, we just did it through the police webpage, and Brooke picked up on it. This year, we're going to work with Brooke to start putting out weekly announcements on emergency management, what to do, where to go, evacuations, who to call, so on and so forth. So we're going to try to start putting together weekly public service announcements through social media on that. I have ordered the emergency management guide booklets or pamphlets. As soon as we get those in, that'll be hard copies for people to pick up. We'll have here at City Hall, and we're also going to start posting that on our social media web pages as well. That's pretty much it. Y'all have any questions? I know we do.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions from council? I think for a few of us, this will be our first time being in the different positions that we have if this scenario comes where there is a hurricane or a natural disaster. And so understanding the risk and the safety in the process, Councilman Oplager, as you speak to, is important. So, Chief, appreciate that overview. Chief, I think you did an excellent job where there's no questions. Unless you want some.
That was my intent.
All right. All right, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the next one. Thank you, Chief. We next have an update by the City Secretary on open City Board positions. Tammy?
So I'm going to go over open positions as well as just the status of our current boards in general. We have our Animal Advisory Board. That one's going to have one vacant position. You'll have an application come forward from Chad, who has volunteered to want to sit and fill that position for who used to be Jessica, for the city representative, and then the reappointment of James McLean and the vet, Dr. Amanda Hoffpower, is also on there. And then your Building and Standards Commission, that board will be on your next agenda for reappointment of those board members. I have two of, it would have been on tonight's, but I have two that I've not heard back from. That board is a very specific board and some of the qualifications that those members need to have. So the current board members all fit those standards, so our recommendation would be to reappoint them. We have the Business Advisory Task Force. That board is completely filled and has been meeting. That is a task force, so they do not follow the Open Meetings Act guidelines, so they can meet whenever they want to set meetings. They can meet here or wherever they want to meet, and they've been very active. The Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, that is a new board that you guys just appointed, and they have their first meeting scheduled for May the 16th. Their first task will be to approve or review the CIAC report and then make recommendation to council on that report. We have the Croy Park Task Force. That board will, the current 4 members are up for reappointment, and then they have one vacancy for Jordan. I do not have anyone that's applied for that position yet, so we can reappoint for the 4, and then if anyone knows of someone that would like to be on that board. We do have a vacancy. And then you have as well the Events Task Force, that one we had one applicant for that one. We've not gotten anybody else interested or that's shown any interest, so that board's just kind of been put on hold. The Manvel Economic Development Corporation, that board is completely filled up. The Parks Board, we have 6 of the 7 applicants that have applied. We're short 1 applicant and the alternates. So if you guys want to move forward and just make it a 6-member board for now until you get that one other person, or hold off until we get 1 more applicant so you have the full 7-member board. And then, of course, P&Z has all its board members filled. And then you've got the South Manvel Development Authority and the TERS 3 board. Those 2 boards kind of go hand in hand. You have 1 vacancy on the TERS board. I do have an applicant for that. She works, longtime Manvel resident that works for the city of Angleton. So that will be coming before y'all. And then there will be some terms that are coming up to expire, one being previous Mayor Deborah Davison's. Not sure if she will reapply since they are looking to relocate or not. And then our Zoning Board of Adjustment has a full board.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for that overview. For the parks, I'd be fine bringing that forward with the 6 compared to the 7, and possibly get that formed and get them to meet to work on a parks use policy and get some effort and some focus there. Council, if you guys know of people that want to serve and want to be involved, please let them know that we have these open positions. We hear a lot of people, a lot of times in public or on social media, that are very opinionated, and this is a chance for them to get involved and to help shape the future of the city. So please, with events, it's staff that runs a lot of it. I know council members help out as well. It would be great to get community members that would be willing to sign up and donate and volunteer some of their time. So if you have people, please personally reach out to them and encourage them to apply. I know I've been doing that, and I think a few of those people have applied for parks, which was great to see. But any comments or questions from council for our city secretary? Is there anything that you need from us, Tammy? All right, appreciate that update. Next, we have agenda item number 9. This was from our last meeting, consideration and possible action to direct staff to add new full-time positions. At our last meeting, we wanted to see where our true situation was financially, where we stood on things from a general fund balance, and then based off of that, if there could be a determination as to maybe some mid-year hires and adjustments, but we first had to understand where we're at financially. And so, Rosie, this one is assigned to you, so we'll give it to you.
With this last financials that I passed out, I created a small worksheet that you would have seen in your package for the financials that looked like this. It basically had the audited fund balance at September 30th, 2023, minus any fund balances, transfers that had already been approved for this year, bringing that amount to $6,890,000 on the fund balance.
1 second, Rosie. We don't see that in our package.
It's not on the financial packets that Dan sent you.
Oh, in the email, so it's not in the agenda packets. Okay. Let's see if we can find those real quick. Give us
Okay, that's fine.
1 second here so we can pull those up.
If not, I can run out and make copies of this.
In an email.
And which email from Dan was it?
Tammy's going to make copies for us real quick.
Yeah, that way it's faster.
Let's see here. Yeah, so it looks like the email was sent to us on May 19th at 2:33 p.m.
May 19th, that hit yet?
Yeah, you didn't get it yet there, Donald?
Yeah, no,
It's
19th, that's still 13.
Oh. April 19th. April 19th. Look, I thought we were going to be out of here by 8 o'clock. We're a little long here.
It sounded right to me, though.
It sounded right. It was good. It was very close. Very close.
That's right. It sounded right.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, Rosie, if you can just start from the beginning of running us through these numbers and also translating these to simple terms for us, that'd be great.
I shall try, but I forget I'm speaking one language and everybody else speaks another one. To make things simple, in our last audit, we had a fund balance on the general fund of $8.3 million. Ever since then, we have transferred $1.4 million from the fund balance to the operating fund balance this year, so that we could use for the different projects that you guys have approved and different items. So what I did now is on fund balance at March 31st, 2024, which is that $11 million that I mentioned in, I think it was last meeting. But if you add to that the revenues that we have not earned yet, but we're expected to earn this year, it's a $4.9 million. But then you have to subtract from that expenses that we have budgeted this current year that we have not spent yet. So that brings our fund balance to $7.2 million. We currently have a surplus of $357,000 if we base it on that number.
And so, Rosie, that when you say surplus, that means that
We've increased it by that much for this current year.
So if our budgeted revenues hold true, of what we haven't recognized yet, $4.9 million, we will add $357,000 into our unused fund balance.
That is correct. But, and that's a big but, our minimum fund balance should be at a $7.4 million right now. I'm underfunding my fund balance right now by $199,000. So if you net that out, you're down to about $150,000 surplus. This gives you a better picture of just the revenues versus expenditures report that you guys been receiving in the past.
Yeah, I think this is great, and this is something that we could expect to get each month moving forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
With any minor tweaks that you might ask for.
Absolutely. Well, Council, based off of this financial analysis, do you have any questions specifically about these numbers? Or Dan, is there anything that you'd like to add?
It's just a bit of, I guess, a cautionary tale. We know that we need more employees to help. Believe me, I especially know. I mean, I'm down 3 people right now. So it's not a matter of whether we want them or not. But what we certainly don't want to do is hire people mid-year, and then the budget year comes, and then we have to have, God forbid, a layoff of some sort. So I think as we're going through the budget, if you give us just a little bit of time to prepare and give you better numbers, I guess, on what our projections are going to be for, you were asking about revenue projections for next year and expenditure projections. Rosie sent those spreadsheets out to all the department heads, I guess, just last week to start thinking about, are there any big, is there another big vac truck thing coming? Is there another big thing coming that we need to prepare for? If we don't have any huge, other than, the obvious facilities and whatnot, if we don't have any huge equipment expenses, okay, can we put that towards personnel this year? So that's all I wanted to say. We want to be really cautious and conservative, and before we rush ahead and hire people. We do at the moment in City Hall and the annex next door. We have a little bit of a space issue. So when we hire these folks, we need to be able to put them somewhere. And then, the furniture and all those kind of things. We're going to be up against that with the new 2 facilities as well, with the police station and Public Works facility. Both of those are going to need, desks and computers and phones and all kinds of that kind of good stuff too. So there are just a lot of things in play right now, Mayor. And if you give us just a little bit of time, we definitely hear you. And again, we are not, please hear me, we're not turning away the help because we know that we need it. We just want to be responsible about it.
Thank you, Dan. One question that I have here for you, Rosie, this unencumbered budget expenses, that's 9.2 as projected through the rest of the year. So if we don't spend as much as what's projected, then the money that we're going to add to the unused fund balance
Would be higher, yes.
Okay.
But then at the same time, if we don't earn the same revenues, it would be lower.
Correct. Absolutely. Council, do you have any questions about these numbers? Councilman Lands?
So when we did our budget last year, all the different departments, there was budgets in each department for these positions, correct? Whether they were filled or not, we had a budget for, they were in there.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
So those positions aren't filled, some of them aren't filled.
Right.
So some of these departments, their departmental bottom line is more than they should have right now, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that doesn't reflect on this sheet here.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Because you really don't want to reflect it in this sheet because that is a position that is still open and can be taken. We can use that kind of money for one-time purchases if we know that we have a wage gap that we call it. But you really can't use it to open another position because when you hire that position, we no longer have that money left over.
Do you know, piggybacking off Councilman Lands, Rosie, do you know what that number is?
No, I do not. I would have to sit down and evaluate, but like, for example, we have the assistant city manager position that's open. We have the planner, the community development director positions. Those are three big ones that are out there open, frankly. Other than that, most of the other ones are smaller positions.
Well, forgive me if I'm wrong, but this kind of looks like that we've overspent 1.4 million. Is that?
We kind of have.
Pardon?
We have. We've pulled out from the fund balance that 1.4 million with all those fund balance transfer-ins that we've requested for one thing or another. Starting with the, what was it, the Jordan Bridge? That one was about 400,000.
It was the Iowa Lane Bridge.
Yeah, was it
The expansion to fix the railroad tracks as well.
the curve? So we've asked for different projects like that we.
And some of it was in the budget itself.
Yeah.
What was the original number, 600,000?
Thank you, Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think what this is saying is that in order to do, if I'm understanding correctly, in order to do some of the projects like paving Iowa Lane, as an example, to do the bridge, as you mentioned, maybe to, some of this was built into the budget as well, to do our one-time supplementals, to get equipment or things like that.
Mhm.
We knew it was a one-time expense, and so that's what this money was being pulled for.
Yes.
Okay. I would be very curious to know what the unfilled position number is, because that is something that we can leverage going into this next budget cycle as one-time expenditures in order to get things like equipment that might be needed. So I'd be very curious to know what that.
And honestly, that's what I try to do with our department heads. I did that last year towards August or September. We start sitting down and whatever gaps they have, if they need any major equipment, for example, in parks, we did that with the water department, we did that with the parks, and we were able to get them some of the smaller equipment that they needed. Some of those meters that the water department needed. We were able to, some of the fire hydrants, the caps that they needed. So we tried to do that at the end of the year anyway with whatever gaps they have.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I know at our last meeting, we were looking at it, and based off of the information we had at the time, it was where we had $11 million in our unused fund balance is what, at least I was in my head thinking. While that's not the case, a positive that I'll take away from it is that we're still at 50%. At the end of the year, if revenues hold the same and expenditures hold as projected in the budget, we will be at 50%, which, remember, we just updated our financial policy from 25% to 50%. So being able to hold steady at that is a positive, not as much as what I would have liked, but a positive nonetheless. Councilman Perry, see.
No, well, it was kind of answered, but just clarifying. What you're asking Manager Dan is for us to hold off until at least we can see what some of our expected revenue will be for next year so that we don't create these positions midterm and then we're unable to fund them next year.
Precisely. Yes, sir.
I just want that clear in my head. As thank you.
Good question, Councilman. Any other comments or questions? So right now, just as a follow-up from our conversation from 2 weeks ago, is anybody wanting to see any move ahead in regards to looking at new full-time positions, or would council rather wait to dive into that when we get to the budget conversation and we can look at revenue projections as well? Okay, we have budget. Everyone else good with that? Okay. And I think one of the things I'll say, Dan, I don't mean to speak for you here, but I know that one of the things you guys are looking at is if there's a way to get contract help and build that into the cost of the work, such as project management help with our capital projects. Maybe there's an opportunity to look at contract help from Olson & Olson or somebody for some open records requests or things like that. I know that you guys are looking at that and always taking that into consideration. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Mayor, I was also thinking on the 1.4, the transfers in from fund balance, what I want to do is, Rosie, let's get together and break that down on what those specifically were, what those transfers were, because it seems like a big number, and it is, but just to sort of have the backup on specifically where those came from, and I'll email those out to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think at least now, Manager Dan, you know where our head is at as council if we're going to look to add some positions, some areas of preference for council, for you guys to look at.
Absolutely, and we do thank you. I hope it doesn't seem like, looking a gift horse in the mouth by any stretch of the imagination. We want them. We're tormented on, we'll just hire them now and make it work later, but that's not the way to do it, so.
Speaking of these full-time positions, I know we will need the budget in order to fund them. When can we start to receive budget presentations from the department heads? What are we looking at? Pulling out that handy-dandy budget timeline.
Absolutely. We put this together for a reason. Let's see. Review, let's see. It looks like it's in the middle of June. The first budget workshop presentation is July 1st. That's when it's scheduled for.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll be doing the internal stuff over the rest of this month and through June, and then looking at the first. Looks like it says July 1st. Is that a Monday still? That's what we have on the calendar.
So we'll get the 2 meetings in July, split up the departments into 2 different meetings, have those. Then if we need to have some carryover to August, we'll do that.
Yes, sir. And some of the departments are bigger, of course. The public safety is, a monster now, as if it wasn't big enough with just police, but now we've got fire and code. And so Chief and I were just talking about that the other day. That one itself, it'll be at least 1, if not 2, just to get everything out there.
There we go. Chief's going to do it without any notes, without any technology, just from the top of the dome, correct? All right, Council, any other comments or questions in regards to this? I appreciate, Rosie, the work that you and Dan put into this. Just to let us know if the money was there, I say let's use it, but I think it's good to know where we're at, understanding how we're doing, what are our risks, how are we mitigating those risks is important. All right, hearing nothing else from council, we'll move on to mayor and council comments. Anything from council? Just one thing for me as mayor, just want to say, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week, so appreciate all of our teachers out there. As I mentioned, my brother's a teacher. They go through a lot, and they absolutely get underpaid for what they do. And I know here in the city of Manvel, we very much appreciate our teachers and the way that they serve our kids, and so thank you for all that you do. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Have a second from Councilman Acree. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0.